her vision, like when she says she wants the left to win, you think, oh, she's making pragmatic compromises for the sake of values that we share. But not really. It seems like she's actually gaslighting us into making sacrifices that will impinge on the things we care about in order for sort of a broad, vaguely liberal, vaguely pro-trans, pro-gay blob to sort of contribute to Biden's re-election. Like I'm not seeing like an actual concerted plan here to help the left per se.
Oh, hey everyone.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk to a special guest today because something happened on Twitter today and it caused a massive shitstorm.
Let's go.
Long story short is that some DMs got leaked and the DMs do not look good. So the person who leaked them last night on stream is here with us. So welcome, President Sunday. How's it going?
What's up? Good. How you're doing? I hope you're doing good too.
Yeah, trying to, all things considered.
Well,
I guess where do we want to start with this? Because I guess.
So how about that? I don't. Yeah.
So again, I guess I don't know if I'm allowed to ask. How did you come by these?
You can ask anything, but I can't necessarily answer everything.
Sure.
They were given to me. I have no details or knowledge about the content except for what specifically was given to me. So I know about as much as you do.
Got it.
In my humble opinion, the Doe ones were really bad. The Benny one is the one that's going to cause problems. Because Doe has a complicated identity, and for a lot of people, I'm included, took a little bit of time to get used to the whole it/its pronouns things. It's not usual for people in the English-speaking language. I've learned recently that apparently that's common in some other languages. Like it has connotations for people that can be a little bit difficult to shake when you're getting used to it. The Benny thing is pretty universally outside of overtly transphobic spaces. I don't know how you salvage that one. That's just bad.
Yeah, let's go over the tweets real quick, and the screenshots, and we can talk about them.
Yeah, I guess sure. I have one thing that I'm curious about. You, like us, seem to have very much like a set of principles or like rules or, kind of values that you followed, I guess. What about these tweets were like, okay, I need to put this out there? About the screenshots? Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, the screenshots. Yeah. Like, why did that seem to be like a important thing to do, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, because one of the themes of what Brianna Boo has been doing as she's been talking to various people is to encourage them to drop, let's say, optically complicated parts of the trans community as things that people advocate for. She said this in various ways, sometimes more directly, sometimes less directly, because apparently if we don't, then that will hurt us in the elections. The logic of that I think is flawed, but I think a little bit worse is, I think maybe significantly worse than simply being an error on pragmatic grounds. I find out that she's also being incredibly contemptful of those groups behind the scenes, and is buddying up with people who actively want those groups to be undermined and sort of cast out from being advocated for altogether. So the reason why I would post those is because they show what her true nature and what her true goals are. When she says she wants victory, this tells you what inflects that word victory in this case. It is not victory for all trans people. It is victory for a very specific subset of trans people. And I think that it's important that people know that, because she's getting in bed with a lot of people who are like very high level representatives, and she's getting a lot of lampshading from them. So it's not great. Kind of feels like everything's being sold out, honestly.
Got it. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, in some ways, like, I guess it feels like her advocacy is, at least as the way you're describing it, is that it seems to be very limited to what is sort of traditionally looked at as like much more easily explainable trans people, such as, binary trans women, binary trans men, etc.
Which would be fine by itself. So people can have. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Zena. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish.
Thank you. Which by itself is not like a significant issue. There are a lot of people who have that opinion, right? And you can argue with people like that. The issue I have with Brianna Wu is that she's effectively bought her way into a position of influence, and she's been disingenuous about what her aims are, and people are giving her cover for it while she's trying to set herself up as a major influencer in the space. And she's making people in the process on board her strategy for the sake of justifying that connection. That's really dangerous. Like Keffel's arguing earlier today that only a transmedicalist discourse can win in the courts.
I have some of the tweets up. We can bring that one up too.
Be my guest. I was going over that a little bit earlier. It's strategically absurd on two grounds. First of all, when she says in the courts, Keffels isn't a lawyer. Keffels isn't interfacing with lawyers when she types that. Keffels is talking to a general audience, which means by in the courts, she actually means this is the only kind of discourse that will be politically viable to sway the courts at distance. That's absurd. We already have self-ID in multiple states. She comes from a country. I'm holding like a wooden fuck for some reason. I don't know why I'm doing that. She comes from a country which has. Well, I don't have a fuck anymore, so there it goes. She comes from a country where self-ID laws are on the books in several provinces. I know for a fact it's in mine. It's not in Ontario, to be fair, but she's also a drive away from another one that is. I think because she's in Northern Ireland, right?
Yes,
so
I believe so.
Yeah, so there are examples of this. So the idea that a non-trans medicalist stance is not viable politically is defied by the empirical facts on the ground. It's sort of like saying, look, guys, we can't advocate for trans rights at all because it's just too weird for the courts. It's like, this has already been done. We are past that point now. You're not going to point to Saudi Arabia and say this is no longer viable. Like, this is a thing that has happened in America. It's happened in Canada. It's happened in Europe in multiple places. Like, we're there. This is a thing that can be done. So declaring that it can't in defense of this, I just don't know what to say to that.
No, I would sadly agree. I want to just be really clear with chat real quick that so I was posting on Twitter earlier today, and I had said that I felt very complicated about the situation because one of the problems I have is that when Keffels did her harassment of trans people campaign and she was donating a whole bunch of money, I was one of those people. She had retweeted my GoFundMe for surgery, and not only did she donate, but also
I nominated you.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you. The other person who donated was Brianna Wu, and I actually had a chance to talk with her in DMs, and it was a pleasant conversation. So one of the things that's really hard is finding out that a person has some of these views. Again, I identify as a xenogender trans woman. I got into an argument today with Luxander because Luxander said, oh, well, she was nice to you because you pass. And first off, I don't ever like that language, and I also don't know if that's entirely true in all circumstances. But it came off as really, really aggressive and unnecessary. And I guess the thing I'm saying is that my goal here is to be as fair as possible and try to. I do not want to give her a break just because she was nice to me, but I'm letting you know that is there in the background. So real quick, before we get more into kind of the effects of these things, let's just go over the tweets real quick. I've got them right here.
One of the things that Poppy and I tend to share on is that transphobes are going to transphobe. Okay, conservatives are going to do conservative things. And that's where the issues of transphobia come from. And the word
can I build off that briefly?
Yeah, I was just going to say that generally the quick version of this is that we're pretty pro we got to include everybody in the trans community because it doesn't matter what flavor of trans, even if it's one of the less common ones, you're still going to need health care. You're going to need medical care and mental health access.
I was going to say, just to build off of that a little bit, one of the things that really frustrates me is that the pragmatic justification for carving off unpalatable members of the trans community, like unpalatable to the right wing or to transphobes or whatever, is that they're not going to notice. They aren't watching us like hawks. They're paying attention to propaganda that is not produced by us. And so what happens is if we end up cutting off all of the people we're supposed to be advocating for on the basis that, well, you're just a harder sell, it's like, well, they're not going to notice. All that's going to happen is you've now turned your energies inward, energies that could have been deployed outwards for policy directionally, as Brianna might say, towards aggravating the right to actually have a political presence. And they're just going to keep on trucking with the same momentum. It makes absolutely no sense. It takes 5 seconds to realize this. It drives me absolutely up a wall.
I have a picture, it's the old...
I was going to say, I'm also on the, gender end spectrum, of things too, so...
Well, and one of the things I have a beam that's it's the old Simpsons "Don't make me tap the sign," and it literally says xenogender non-binary people have never actually hurt the trans community. What hurts the trans community is transphobes, legislators, and the like. Because again, spicy variations of non-binary don't really cause problem. We're talking about a percent of a percent of a percent. This is not a thing except online, really. And so the problem is that at the end of the day, if somebody, however someone identifies, really doesn't matter. If they still want hormones, they still should have access to them. And the problem being is that like when you start cutting people off, the language of the things we're advocating for can start getting cut off too. Again, if I have no doubt in my mind that if conservatives had the ability to start slicing up the trans community in order to make us a less effective, I guess, block, if you want to call it that, they would. If they're willing to like accept binary trans people but cut off non-binary trans people, why not?
Oh, I have a really good example.
They pretended to accept gay people for a minute to go after trans people. Like,
well, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. They used to make that same argument as well. Like, Brooks here in my comments just pointed out, like during the fight for gay rights, many said to leave trans and bi people behind because it would hurt the movement. Like, obviously it didn't. Obviously, like we're there. Like the legalization and recognition of gay relationships and gay marriage, even that's in the past. Increasingly, they're having less and less barriers even to adoption and whatnot. It's not perfect, but like we're well on our way now. This is no longer like an alien new country that we're traversing. Like these are things that we have accomplished.
Well, one of the examples that I think of a lot is, let's say there's like teens on TikTok. Okay, there's a lot of really weird TikTok videos, and some of them don't always make sense to us, and sometimes the teens don't have the perfect language. Okay, or they come up with language and jargon that is unique to them that may not make sense to us. Okay, I've seen this. Okay, but like, if we cut these kids off and leave them out, then we've basically just alienated a whole ton of youth, left them just high and dry without resources. And also, these kids are still going to be utilizing mental health services, medical services, all of that. So we end up really like losing out every which way and hurting like our own community. And again, a transphobe's not going to know the difference. Like, they're just going to probably make fun of everyone all the same. Maybe like if they can base it off of somebody's looks more or less, who knows? But I really worry about, splitting everything up too much as well.
All right, so let's go through these screenshots real quick so everybody can be caught up. I assume most people have seen them, but let's talk about them. So the name of this group is known as Sissy Hippo Pub, which is, I guess, Sissy Hypno, I assume, is the reference to that.
I have no idea what that is.
Sissy Hypno is a kink where people will do hypnosis in order to force feminize themselves.
I see.
Yeah. So here is a picture of Benny, known ML, and it says, it puts the lotion on its skin. This is a person named Cactus. Her dress reminds me of those god-awful skirts that femboys buy. Someone apparently thought that was funny. This is Jenny Matrix, well-known transmedicalist. Someone named Olive Venom, who says, please. Brianna Wu here saying God. And then it comes down to this person saying no, and then it comes down to what looks like Brianna Wu saying, I mean, if you're not super hot, maybe just dress normally and don't present yourself as a transvestite. You can go a long way with just being skinny and dressing normally. Not great. Not my favorite.
Not great.
Nope, not my favorite. Look, I'm speaking really honestly here. Heterodox takes, probably too honestly, but I now recognize leftist culture was always going to take us here. I said nothing about the BLM riots because I didn't want trouble.
Nobody picked up on that one. I am curious as to what she meant.
Oh yeah, it says flat out. It's this is Matrix talking, right? So
no, I think that's Wu. I think that's Wu talking, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Wu.
Oh, it is Wu. Yeah, it is Wu. Okay.
That's not Matrix. That's Wu. Yeah.
Oh god damn it. Okay, yeah, okay. I said nothing about the BLM riots because I didn't want the trouble. I want to know what the hell that means. And I said nothing when Tanky started taking over the party because I didn't want that. I mean, I wish you would have. As I said nothing when they took over trans stuff and said you didn't need dysphoria to be trans. All right, real quick.
Let's talk about that one. Because I think you and I we agree more than we disagree, but I think there's a language friction going on there. We've been meaning to talk about this for a long time. Because we had a mild disagreement about the philosophy.
Well, let me bring up my tweet earlier and I can tell people where the disagreement, we can talk about the disagreement. Right I have here is my tweet from my account, which is, not all transgender people suffer from gender dysphoria, and that distinction is important to keep in mind. Gender dysphoria and or coming out as transgender can occur at any age. The American Psychiatric Association. So the reality is that, at least from a clinician perspective, which is what I work in, the reality is that some people do not have gender dysphoria. Now, do they have some variation where they know that they want to be other than they are? Sure, but does that equal the actual word dysphoria? Maybe. And so the question we also get into the question of the difference between the factual reality of what they are versus how we diagnose. Because the problem is that in order to get go ahead on a surgery, most clients who are trans are still diagnosed with gender dysphoria because they at least have some level of dissonance, even if it doesn't quite match the criteria. Because if they still want surgery or hormones,
this is the stuff that insurance companies have to see.
yeah, like this is just, these are just hoops. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. What are your thoughts, Sunday?
Well, I think what I was getting at more was on the argument, which I think was poorly worded. So I understand, and it's possible like I'm giving Philosophy Tube too much credit, and she didn't know what she was talking about either. But what I was getting at was the argument that gender dysphoria as a category, quote unquote, isn't real, which is absurd because of course it's real. But what I think was sort of being got at there was not that it wasn't a real thing, but rather that when you're dealing with things like affect, there is a little bit of artificial carving off where it's like what counts as gender dysphoria and what doesn't. There's going to be a pragmatic decision somewhere down the line, and it's not necessarily going to be one that's going to reflect like the full range of possible knowledge about the kind of thing. And so I can understand somebody saying about gender dysphoria, the word is like a mapping of a cluster of affective things. As like, nah, yeah, like this could be expanded or whatever. There isn't really an essential truth to the actual range of what's grouped in here. It's a cluster of things that have associations that we identify as. It's sort of like a lot of other medical diagnoses where you base them off of like an aggregate of symptoms, and it's like syndrome.
Yeah, they're all constructs based on aggregate of symptoms. The thing is that, and what I would add to this real quick is that the reason why I'm perpetually angry at Philosophy Tube is that my issue is not that her point is that gender dysphoria is sort of arbitrarily placed. It's that the problem is that she conflated the NHS system and its borked use of terminology and accidentally sort of stepped on this landmine where it's ended up invalidating a lot of trans people because she basically said it in the most ineloquent way humanly possible. The other problem I have with her is that
Can you remind me of that? It's been a hot minute. This is a very stale conversation.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah. So there was a very specific thing that she did in there that I took issue with, and that was she had gone, well, is it really gender dysphoria or is it just all of these other emotions? And it had a really weird ring to it. And that was really my issue with her framing of gender dysphoria, especially because it made it seem like dysphoria on its own wasn't a thing. And this is actually a segment that we haven't gotten to make yet, because I also deal with premenstrual dysphoria disorder, which has dysphoria in the name. And dysphoria is its own thing.
Series of feelings, experiences, and the
like.
Yeah,
and it's got a lot of overlap with other emotions, but it certainly is its own thing. It is somewhat unique. And it's a hard one because even learning about it from like the PMDD perspective, okay, so this is my body doesn't process hormones properly and freaks out once a month before my period starts. I had to look to what a lot of trans people said about dysphoria to actually kind of learn what this experience was like and kind of make sense of what I was seeing a lot of other people in the PMDD community talk about. And so, yeah, that's my issue with Philosophy Tube. There just wasn't a good expansive version of it. And I'm like, none of this came off great from her. So
yeah, no,
the Wikipedia page is good though.
Yeah, so instead of challenging, just to put it in my language, the essentialness of the essentiality of the category of gender dysphoria is this thing like a rigid thing that actually tracks specifically a concrete thing in the world that you will always find in the same form elsewhere. It's like obviously not. But if she says it's just these other emotions or these other like issues, it sounds like she's breaking the spell. She's reducing it down to, there's not gender dysphoria. You just have these neurons firing or whatever. Like you've got this disorder and this disorder or these feelings, and you're calling it gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and the problem is the argument we made in our Philosophy Tube video was that so people were saying, there should be no gatekeeping in regards to surgery, stuff like that. And while I do think the amount of gatekeeping should be reduced, as someone who works as a clinician and has had clients push back when they've been able to move too fast through the system, I argued in that our video, and me and Zena agreed on this, is actually, I think gender dysphoria as a category should be opened up to cis people. If a woman wants to get a tit job because she feels like that will make her more of a woman, she will feel more feminine with larger breasts. How is that not gender dysphoria? But at the same time,
to have it a more mundane example, that's not going to spook people who find, for example, like breast augmentation scary. If you have a cis man like even a cis child who has gynecomastia, there will be no medical objections to having that reduced. It's the exact same procedure.
That is a gender affirming
but
surgery.
It's a gender affirming surgery, exactly. It's the same kind of procedure, I should rather say, as general top surgery, with modifications, but it's the same principle.
And so my argument is that I think the gatekeeping, while does need to be reduced overall, I think it needs to be uniform across cis and trans people, because to some degree, we allow cis people to get infinite number of surgeries. We've seen numbers of shows where people have been showed off as freak shows of getting numerous surgeries because no one will stop them. But trans people get stopped in their tracks because of these gatekeeping measures. And my thing is, no, I think probably if someone wants to go through these things, probably talking to a therapist like a session or two is not a terrible plan.
You were describing the emotions, and it kind of felt like, okay, to me, it felt like hearing, okay, well, you feel feeling off, and like that dysphoria and that weird offness that I can't really describe is still its own thing from like feeling upset or sad or depressed or anything like that. Like it is its own type of thing. But I was mostly meaning that as a add-on to what you were saying earlier, so I was put out of place at this point.
Sorry about that.
Thanks. Yeah, I really was quick. It just you hopped in. And,
all right.
Okay. You might need to keep an ear out, love.
There you
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Well, I think in addition, like given what we know about how human beings develop, both physically and psychologically, even in evolutionary terms, it doesn't make sense for our medical systems to have main characters as opposed to non-ones. Like there shouldn't be protagonists of a medical system in that way, where it's like, you, despite having the exact same procedure, no, we've determined you're a weird one. You're deviating from what God only knows, apparently. It's silly.
Well, and again, like there's so much science fiction, and I guess we can move on from here. But I guess the one thing I was going to add is that there is so much science fiction. Cyberpunk is a really good example of this. Is like technology gone too far is a big trend in there, where you see people like get so cybered up that they either become cyber psychos or like they modify themselves to be like less human. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but I do think that to some degree there is a sort of critique in there about sort of capitalism run rampant and allowing people to do these things without any kind of checks and balances. I do feel like there does need to be people checking in to make sure that there are, people are being considered about this. And I only bring this up, and I said this in the segment as well, is that, I've had a client who wanted HRT, really, really wanted HRT. We got them on HRT. And within a month, they started developing breast tissue, despite me clearly saying this would happen, got dysphoric over it and stopped. And then the majority of our sessions following were about what could we have done better to prepare them. And the problem is that, other than educating somebody, I have to assume you're a rational adult that's making decisions.
Yeah.
And so it gets really hard because there is these occasional pushbacks. And so I guess my thought is just, that's kind of where I come from with the gender dysphoria thing. I think, and there's also just like a thing is like, if you snapped your fingers today and gender dysphoria was like as a category would be gone, nobody be getting any surgeries because you need some code to get them to pay for surgery. Was it $68,000 of my bottom surgery was literally like covered because there was a diagnosis code on the bill. Like you have to have something unless you want to magically change the entire health system, which if you do, great. But until that happens,
we would love to get there. That just won't happen tomorrow.
Yeah. So
Beyond Safe Words had a good example too of like women or AFAB people getting like facial hair or extra body hair in places that they're not comfortable with.
Oh, laser. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Like that's still like would be like a gender affirming hair, I would argue.
I would 100%.
Shaving is a gender affirming care for even for cis men sometimes. Like depending on. Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
And like to be clear here, like one of the things with gender too that people don't realize is that like this is one of the things that Judith Butler gets into. We sort of tend to treat sex as nature and gender as culture. It's not entirely accurate. It's actually closer to there's a sort of crystallization of practices, and then we start to refer to that in natural terms and build off of that. And that is cultural. So, for example, when we talk about different organs, when we refer to these as female organs, et cetera, the way we code those is by reference to their gender associations in the world. It's not the other way around. We don't start from an understanding of the human reproduction system and move up from there to assigning roles. We start from people who occupy this reproductive role and have these particular features on average. We're going to call this X. And then as we study these closer and closer and closer, we associate these things farther and farther down. And that's how we essentialize the organs themselves as being female, when in fact, once again, like from the eye of view of nature, there's not really a distinction between them. Like obviously, once again, nobody denies that there are conditions to reproduction. That's not really up for debate. But like in terms, although less and less so now, obviously we've had the first successful womb transplant.
Oh, 1,000%.
So we come back to Brianna and her statements.
Yeah.
Yes,
Next she
about
says, and I'm looking at where we are, and it's just like my silence led us here. All ours did. We did it with great intentions, but if we don't stop this bullshit, leftism will die. I think, wow, that's a bold statement. I think because I'm old enough to remember when we moved away from transsexual, I'm a bit more nuanced. You have to remember daytime TV was obsessed with the sex and transsexual. So it was...
I need to bring that back. That's what she says.
So it was trying to water that down. I do think that as transgender doesn't mean anything clinically anymore, it makes more sense to bring it back. Again, literally Contra got in trouble for a joke about literally saying something to the effect of like being an old school transsexual. And like, this is just being said without like full throated, full chest.
That whole like aside that we all had, by the way, of like our values and how we think about the situation and everything, compared to what you're reading in these tweets. And like, she's still mentioning like leftism will die. And like that, her statements are completely at odds with like what we're talking about right now. And it's, wow.
Well, that's the thing. Like her vision, like when she says she wants the left to win, you think, oh, she's making pragmatic compromises for the sake of values that we share. But not really. It seems like she's actually gaslighting us into making sacrifices that will impinge on the things we care about in order for sort of a broad, vaguely liberal, vaguely pro-trans, pro-gay blob to sort of contribute to Biden's re-election. Like I'm not seeing like an actual concerted plan here to help the left per se. I think what really frustrates me in all of this is that if she wanted to play that role, there would be so much less to say about her if literally all she did was she's a person with a young Turk rooted pack. She allocates money where she sees fit in a loose sense for quote unquote progressive politics. Happens all over the place. Nobody cares, right? If she has these negative opinions in the background, that happens too. A lot of those people are going to vote for politicians who are going to who are going to be in favor of like certain progressive policies that we all have in common, despite the fact that they have opinions that we regard as bigoted. That's like par for the course. Nobody else in that chat is of interest for that particular reason. This is super normal and mundane. Problem is that she's then being disingenuous about that in an effort to situate herself as a major mover and pusher in the movement, as like a figurehead who's like directing other people on what they should do. And so if she's being disingenuous about what her goals are, then that makes her advice untrustworthy, because when she says you need to do this or the left will lose, she doesn't actually mean you need to do this or you will lose. She means you need to do this or the stuff that I care about, which excludes you, will lose. That's the issue I have. Because like the crux of all of this is not the fact that the comments are so nasty. Like other people in that chat were making equally nasty comments. Who cares? The crux of it is she was making those comments and publicly declaring the opposite in order to secure a position of influence.
Well, yeah, because she was saying on Twitter publicly that she supported non-binary people, but this clearly shows that that's not true. And again, I have on screen from, this is Naomi Chance's tweet below yours, which is, this is the person she was talking to, Jenny Matrix. What is a trans opinion that'll get you like this? That was tweeted by
Patrick in chains right now.
And it says, non-binary is not a real thing. Transgender is a meaningless category. Self-ID is a terrible idea. If you're not transsexual, you are not trans. Most trans activism is a complete joke. The trans movement has been hijacked and subverted by gender abolitionists.
I think the worst part is that she started off trying to make this sort of milquetoast apology for it and downplaying it. And then as soon as some large figure seemed to endorse the position she said explicitly, she switched keys immediately and went mask off. It's like, yeah,
I actually think I have that
we have to be able to talk.
You're talking about Shu, right?
Not just Shu, but also Shu, yeah.
Yeah, I got the tweet right here. So a few things. Summit group DMs got leaked tonight and were selectively chosen to paint a completely false narrative about me not respecting non-binary people. If you read the whole group chat, you'll see comments from me talking about how I think non-binary people's experience real pain. Shu, nah, you were spitting in some of those caps. The amount of left-wing YouTubers, streamers, large Twitter accounts, trans and cis, who agree with you, but like you have not said anything publicly is hilarious. Not my place to out them, but inshallah, they will grow a spine one day. Shoo, I fucking hate you. And then the thing is, all of us are having private conversations concerned about how anything but the most actual position will get you in trouble. And you're right, this isn't going to stop until we say this stuff publicly. Wait, you just changed, wait. Brianna, what?
Also, that's a lovely language game for me talking about how I think non-binary people are experiencing real pain. What? That's not you validating
Look,
non-binary people.
I'm not trans, but I gotta say, I don't have secret logs somewhere with me calling trans women I don't like transvestite presenting. That's a thing I haven't done. That's a thing I don't think I've even done when I was conservative, actually. That's like a different level of gross. I don't think most people in this space actually do that. I think people pointed this out. It's really telling when you assume that that's the norm. I don't necessarily believe that.
Yeah, I don't think I am in like several group chats with a lot of folks, and the idea that like this is a thing, like Shu, you're literally dating a guy who's like a Catholic Nazi. Like it's okay. Like I don't think I trust your group DMs, but.
You might be surprised. I actually described, he was asking me earlier, because I talk to him now and then. You're talking about eudaimonia. The weirdest thing, actually. I was talking to him earlier. He was like, I don't understand what's going on, like compared to the union stuff that's going on. It seems so like small and insignificant. And I pointed out, it's like, well, here's an analogy. You're Catholic, right? It's sort of like if there was a general cultural movement to stamp out Christianity, and you were told to shut up and not advocate for yourself because you need to have solidarity with Islam and other religions in order to get broader religious freedoms for all, even at the expense of you getting carved out and probably never getting a foot in the door again for the foreseeable future. And he understood that then, because that's the stake that's
yeah.
Mm-hmm. The LGBTQ LGBTQ plus is like a federation kind of thing. Like it's a lot of different groups of people that are working together, and even each of those can be subdivided just a little bit more. Like the acronym is not super holistic that way or fine grained. You cannot tell people within that group to sacrifice their own self-interest, to sacrifice the interest of the people like them or people they care about, for the sake of some nebulous notion of, well, maybe it'll win better if somehow we don't represent ourselves anymore, which is, it's again, like the logic is incredibly flawed, and it assumes that you're the main character of the propaganda about you when you're really not. The propaganda doesn't need you. The Nazis would not have failed had the people they targeted just disappeared themselves in advance.
Yeah, no, 100%. Next tweet we got on screen is Keffels. So Keffels retweeted Brianna Wu about the DM leak, and this is what she said. I've been out as trans for almost 13 years, and I guarantee most people outraged by this has a private account somewhere on Twitter where they are saying worse. The real proof trans women are women is how catty they are to each other. Now, she responded below and said, just to clarify, I agree that those DMs aren't good. My point is not that it's okay for Brianna said those things. What I'm saying is that this mean girl behavior is much more common in private than most people are willing to admit. I've seen little attempt at constructive dialogue today. So lately Keffels has been doing really well, and all right,
so if I give this benefit of the doubt,
I feel like it's just to defend her friend. That's all I got.
Can I tell you why she made that post? I just sent you something in DMs. This is from today. I don't know if you saw it yet.
Is it the screenshot? Because I've got it up already.
I'll tell you why you don't give the benefit of the doubt to this one in particular.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Vosh at that table, Brianna Wu has to go out and get Vosh to go on that table, right? Vosh doesn't need to be at that table. Vosh is wealthy, he's established, he's comfortable, he's been in his fortress arc, he's been fine sitting still with his audience doing what he does. Destiny, same deal. Destiny's got a hunger for bigger and better things, but fundamentally, he's not begging Brianna Wu to be at that table. He doesn't need to be at that table. It'd be nice if he's at that table. It's kind of cool to be there with Vosh. He's now like the center of attention again in a broader sense than usual. He doesn't need to be there. Brianna Wu does not have to. Brianna Wu has to go ask him to join. He's not going to say no. Keffels wants to be at that table. Keffels really wants to be at that table. Keffels being at that table makes or breaks Keffels. That's her platform right now. That's why she talked to Keemstar. That's why she does what she does. So, like, in terms of why Keffels is defending Brianna Wu, like, it's pretty obvious. There's just a mutual self-interest there. It's that simple. This is one of the reasons why Vosh isn't defending Brianna Wu. Destiny barely defending Brianna Wu. I think he was even critical of her during the review of the Tim Pool conversation. Keffels is the one who's doing damage control, and I'm not going to go any further than that. But it's like there's like an obvious interest here, and there's an obvious interest in her audience that she should recognize, and she made a choice.
So I'm gonna say that, like, I have a different read, and my different read of this is just okay. So I made a comment on Twitter about not being a huge personal fan of Doe.
Yeah.
And the reason I made that is because about a year and some change ago, what happened is there was a Demon Mama stream where she had covered somebody. I had asked them not to. I was ignored. And because I was trying to defend a person that I was concerned for their safety, I ended up getting into a pretty big fight with, Demon Mama, or not Demon Mama herself, but basically there was a very large separation between our communities. I don't regret what I did, but I do recognize the same behavior that I had then that I see in Keffels. And at least from my perspective, it's that when someone is your friend, when someone is someone you care about, if you are somebody who you genuinely have some connection with, your goal and your goal in some ways is to want to reach out and protect them immediately. And I feel like this reads in the same way the stuff that I tweeted out a year or some change ago about bimbo politics does. It is a person protecting their friend and doing so in a way where they are putting that friendship above. I would actually say putting that friendship above pragmatism, because the pragmatic thing, the actual political thing to do would be to just not say shit. You could just never say a word, it'd be fine.
I don't know the details of that situation, so I'm not going to interrogate it here.
Yeah. I just.
But I'm going to. But
Yeah.
I'll retort a little bit. And at the end of the day, we're making the best guess.
It's all speculation. I agree.
It's all speculation. Here's my immediate retort and my immediate wonder. If I were in that position and I wanted to defend someone from a take like that, and the evidence was a screenshot from a closed group I knew the person who had the screenshot didn't have access to, first thing I would ask is, how do you know they're real? And at no point did that come up. Nobody asked that question. It was acknowledged right from go. Nobody was surprised. There was no like, oof, this looks really bad, but da-da-da-da. It was just immediate. It was immediate lampshading for it. And one of the things that makes me deeply suspicious is there are so many ways to challenge this first before you even get to that point. She has openly lied about it. There's been no address about that. Like, she's gone back and forth. She's done both things. She said, I wouldn't say anything so terrible. I unequivocally support non-binary people to, oh, there's a famous person supporting the thing I said. Isn't that actually based? Yes, we are part of the silent majority. It just can't fly.
So real quick, Gay Fesh said in our tweet or on our chat, excuse me, that Brianna immediately acknowledged they were real, which is maybe why Keffels didn't question that. Because she immediately put out the tweet saying, like, these got put out. So the question is that, if Keffels is quote tweeting her, so she knows that the DMs got leaked, that they are in fact real, rather than Brianna saying they're fake, she's saying they're false narrative. So I would guess that, like, that, unfortunately, to me, I think
she's explicitly said they're lies elsewhere. I have screenshots of that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find one for you.
Yeah, please. I will say that, like, this is what you were talking about earlier. I'll just show it real quick just for people's benefit. It's just, this was posted in Discord server. And it just says, transmedicalist arguments are the only way you can protect the rights of trans people in court, removing concepts like dysphoria that have a basis in medical literature from the discourse, and simply making it a matter of self-identification is going to fuck us all. And Sunday explained why this is not the case. Literally, Ireland has, UK has self-ID. Self-ID model is fine. It's good.
I mean, you self-ID when you talk to your therapist too. Like, let's be real here. Like, yeah, there's a diagnosis code.
Well, I think it's if she's in Northern Ireland, There are requirements. So I think.
Oh yeah, I'm not speaking about Ireland so much,
Oh,
or
where she lives
that I know what the
specifically. Gotcha,
requirements
gotcha,
are,
okay.
but yeah, if you've got data on that, sure.
I just wanted to point out that like there's a lot of people with very, very angry pushbacks on Keffels. And again, like I genuinely like Keffels. I like Keffels as a person. I befriended her back when she was dealing with substance abuse, and you know, I consider her a friend. I do not like this take. I feel like I have the right to push back on that, despite the fact that I care about this person a lot. I wish I really don't like this. This is the thing that President Sunday was talking about. This is a screenshot.
This is a Discord screenshot someone sent me.
Yeah, and it says, "I said her outfit made her look like one, and I apologize publicly for using that word. We were having a private conversation, and of you hiding the replies, that's not the same. So you said that she looked like a transvestite. Yes, it was wrong. She's been attacking me viciously for days." Yeah, I mean, there's this little bit of double talk there. And again, like the on the one hand, if she had just said, "Yeah, I said it because I was being mean because she's been going after me," I would have respected it. Like, it's not the best thing, but at least you're honest.
Well, what the initial one says, I think this is the one I sent you in the group chat. You can put it on the screen. I don't know if you got it yet.
Yeah, let me
This person called Sundays, no affiliation or relationship, says, "No, it's just a cherry on top, and she's hiding replies that call her out for calling Benny a transvestite in a private chat with a TERF." And Wu replies, "No, this is a lie." And then he shows the screenshot, and then Brianna Wu says, "This is a fucking lie." It's like the thing's right there.
Here is the top part. "No, it's just the cherry on top of the sundae that she's hiding the replies out for calling Benny a transvestite in a private chat. TERF. The TERF, no, this is a lie." Yeah, okay.
Can I just say, if I'm a little bit uncharitable by comparison to you, and I acknowledge fully that in most of these judgments there's an element of judgment, so their perspective is going to color this. It's not definitive evidence in either interpretation. Brianna Wu has spent the last several months calling me a woman hater, accusing me of criticizing people like not so erudite, I couldn't remember her name for a second, and herself on the grounds that I just despise women, despite the fact that she originally interacted with me defending Destiny. I guess Destiny is a girl's name, but one of the things that like really colors this the wrong way for me is that all this is going on. She then gets cover for this, and the explanation is that this is just the result of them being women. Women just can't help themselves but call trans women they have disagreements with transvestite presenting. I don't know what it's like. So like there's an element to this calculus where I have to make a charitable leap in order to justify this and make this palatable, that I personally, not just personally, but also more broadly, but definitely personally have like zero motive to make. And there's a lot of people like that. It's the most misogynistic take imaginable. Like the bad thing she did was literally the result of her womanness. That's the Keffel's defense of Brianna Wu. It's the Wu defense of Brianna Wu, to be fair.
No, it's fair. I just wanted to bring this up real quick. This is the tweet I put out earlier today, just so like people understand where I was coming from earlier today. So I put this out at like 10:18 a.m. I was in the middle of dilating, like literally
like getting ready for work.
So
I was trying
let
to
me
get
be
ready
clear,
to go
I am
to my
multitasking like a
appointment.
motherfucker. Do not ask me how I feel about the Brianna Wu situation. I really don't know how I fucking feel. I hate the content of those screenshots, but I'm a xenogender trans woman who had a very positive experience with her, and I'm not going to speculate on her transness or whether she is cisgender. That shit is disgusting and inappropriate. What I will say is that if she ever wants to come on stream and discuss gender dysphoria, transmedicalism, and non-binary people with an actual clinician and 2 non-binary people, she has an invite. And I still extend that. Like my hope is to educate. Whether she wants to or not, that's up to her. But again, to me, like, this is really bad, guys. Like,
Yeah.
past all of my own, and then this also happened, and I gotta show this because this was sent to me by Naomi Chance right before the thing. Here's Ian Miles Chong showing the screenshot saying Brianna Wu redemption arc.
Yeah.
God, he's a fucking troglodyte.
And I definitely understand where you're coming from, Sunday.
Although I am pleased to see he's overcoming his fear of women, but
growth is growth.
Growth is growth.
With like the political stuff earlier, like the channel and everything, when like, because I do think that Keflis is in a really difficult position, and I'm not saying that to excuse anything. I just, when I watch her content, I do hold that in mind, is that she is in a difficult position. There is so much hate coming to her from one way, you know, there's protective community on the other side, and no, she is kind of a position that I see where she probably does need all the allies she can get, and so that does complicate this.
Can I be honest with you? I do have a certain, I acknowledge that difficulty, especially for people in that position politically with that particular, for a public person of that scale with that identity, that's going to happen a lot. It's not to dismiss it, but that is a brute fact.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I hold this as, I just want to be clear that I hold this on like as, this is one of the potential biases that I keep in mind that I could be seeing as I'm watching her content, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's totally fair, and I would tend to share that bias, but I think by the same token, we're also dealing with someone who has orders of magnitude more resources than more or less any of you who are doing the exact same thing, who deal with the same kind of thing. And in addition to this, we're talking about someone who is operating in a space where this isn't pure entertainment. They've situated themselves as a political representative. They've made a point of making their activities representative and aligned with political goals. The reason why she's at this dinner with Vosh and Destiny is precisely that. It's connected to that project. And so at a certain point, like, there is some responsibility to the people you're representing at that level. And it's not simply the case, I think, that just because somebody hasn't signed an official form saying, I am your governmental representative, that therefore literally anything and everything they do, even when it comes down to defending pretty egregious behavior targeting that community as well, should just get a free slide. People who are much smaller, who like take on a much bigger economic and psychological burden for doing so, have stood on principle and refused those things. They've refused to provide cover for people who are actively doing pernicious things. They've refused to sell out parts of their audience in order to build those connections, and so on and so forth. I have a suspicion that everybody in this room has done so at some level. And while I respect that, like, the nature of her position means that there are a lot of psychological and real dangers, by the same token, I don't think that's a blank check to just act irresponsibly and selfishly whenever, like, the opportunity arises, you know? And in this particular case, and in this particular case, I just don't see a justification. This is the end result of this, and this is the farce of the whole thing. This coalition building, what is the end result of it? What does it actually produce? It's canvassing. What was everybody involved already going to do? It's like, there's literally no purpose to this except to make a spectacle on the stage itself that dies as soon as it's translated into real political action. You're going to see, I predict, almost the exact same numbers. And people who watch Vosh aren't going to run out to canvass for Destiny. People who watch Destiny aren't going to run out to canvass for Vosh. People who watch Keffels, I God only knows. So probably they're going to run out to canvass for Vosh, however many handfuls of them are available for that. But you're basically just replicating the exact same situation as before, burning a lot of communities along the way on the inside, creating like whole new opportunities for like fractures in these communities, just to get everybody exactly where they would have ended up anyways. And it's just, and the only thing I can the only like logic, ultimately, the only conceivable end that is actually, and it is literally just a way for somebody to buy their way in, to appropriate the spectacle of all of them at once. It's ridiculous. Your political representation at the level of this medium has been bought. The Young Turks effectively just bought them.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
She's literally Brooks, exactly. She's literally given the other side ammo. And remember when Wu suddenly had a change of heart about Destiny? It was a little after Keffels had that Keemstar conversation and then went low and stopped producing. And now all of a sudden the person who's famous for going, Hogwarts Legacy is it's a test of character and people are failing. suddenly she sees a light. She's a lot in common with Destiny value-wise, and she can build something with them. So I have a very dim view of the motives of everyone here, as you can tell.
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can't say one way or the other. The only thing I can say is that.
Sure.
Well, we existed in an island sometime for the longest time, so I don't know. We're kind of in the similar boat that you are about motives. Go ahead, love.
Yeah, I like to think that, like, I don't know. I just like to hope that people are going to be better, but I can't really fault you on any of your logic. I find myself just, I don't know. I guess I just look at this and I just find myself really just sad.
I wouldn't be, and I wouldn't be, and I'm actually optimistic, and I'll tell you why. Still sad a little bit because I like, once again, I put my sword down and I tried to work positively with a lot of these people. I overlooked a lot with Keffels because we had a lot of community overlap, and I went against my better judgment, and I just trusted. What will happen is if these people lose their identity as representatives of the community, because they're not actually the community itself, they are just media figures, precisely that. They will lose their identity as such, which means that there will be a space. There will now be an untapped market for people to rise up and take that position potentially and do it better. And what will happen as a result of all these people being mashed together and their communities intertwining is there will be, once again, new opportunities for fractures in that new blob. So we're not actually in that dark of a place. What's frustrating is that people we put a lot of trust in have let us down. Not all of them, but a lot of them. People we thought of as friends have let us down. But that's hardly the end of it. Stuff changes very, very fast. We're probably not going to recognize the scene in a year from now that is happening before our eyes. So I would not be pessimistic about the future necessarily. Certainly not on these grounds. It's deeply disappointing when you have people who are occupying like relatively critical spaces, at least with respect to you when you're trying to engage with this stuff, relatively critical spaces in the area that you're working in, sort of fall for the temptation of like fame and money and like mainstream access and stuff like that. But that's not the end of it. And I mean, you just take a step back and look broadly at the thing. All those people together are minuscule compared to a lot of the other actors that are operating the space. The Young Turks themselves, for example, who have to, like Anna Kasparian has to bend down to go launder her sudden political pivot on like Adam and Sitch of all people. This is not relevant for precisely the reason that it's wasteful. It's not relevant. So I think the important thing right now is not to be discouraged by this, but to really focus on community building and networking and working positively as much as possible with the other people who are not bought out at this point. Because eventually some of them will rise up too and they'll become bigger. And
Sure.
It'll be, yeah.
Sure, 100%. Again, I guess that is a hope there that, like, you know, people will either survive this or they will not, you know, and we can go from there. I guess it just.
I think she'll survive it because these people have their own gravity. People don't. It's the same thing with Wu, right? The reason why people give Wu a pass is not because Wu's just so charismatic. The reason why people give Wu a pass is because she's been positioned to be able to give political access to people or economic access or media access. Same with Keffels, Vosh, and Destiny. Less so with Keffels and Vosh because they're kind of cagey, but that's what it is ultimately. Like if you get an appearance on Destiny, you get an audience with a few thousand people that you wouldn't have otherwise. You get an audience on Vosh, a few thousand people. A lot of people squander it, but like that's fundamentally it. Which means they're always going to, so long as they keep the show running, there's always going to be there's always going to be people gravitating in that direction. They're fixtures. They're not really going away. I can see some of them retiring or kind of going quiet as happens from time to time, but this is not the kind of scandal that breaks channels. It is the kind of scandal that pushes people into a more definite political location. And to that end, I am satisfied with where this has all gone, because the goal is not to destroy Brianna Wu. You can't destroy Brianna Wu. First of all, Brianna Wu is basically not an entity. Brianna Wu exists as she is because she has other people's money being funneled through her. There's no way to break that. We're talking about something that's way beyond any of us in terms of scale. But insofar as she's located firmly in a specific political space, she can't mislead people about what her goals are actually purposed towards. And I think that to that end, like, that's an achievement. I think that's the kind of thing that we should be keeping in mind as a goal. Not to beat people. You can't beat people. There's no such thing as like a YouTube or Twitch takedown that's so strong that the person is just literally destroyed at the end and is no longer a danger or a presence, except with Mr. Girl apparently. But what you can do is you can push them to sort of locate themselves in a way where they lose the flexibility they had before, and now they're a known entity that doesn't stand in the same dangerous relation to everything else. So I think that's more or less my diagnosis of the thing. I apologize for rambling so much.
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. I guess to me it's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I guess we'll find out in the next couple weeks how people respond to this, because I can't imagine Keffels isn't going to stream, and I can't imagine people aren't going to keep pushing on Brianna Wu. So I guess we'll see.
I don't know. I have no predictions. I will say this: expect the worst and don't be discouraged by it if it happens. If something else happens, great. Okay, but there. Up till now, what we have seen is reason to believe that basically everybody will take a stance of, it's not that bad. Guys, we need to focus on coalition building, same old song and dance. So if that happens, I would not let your heart be troubled by it. I would keep on pressing on, because this is not going to be in memory in a few years from now. This is fundamentally not important. The issue with it primarily is that right now it is causing a lot of demoralization and is directing people towards bad strategies that should not have wide uptake. So, got
it. Yeah, no, I can't say I disagree. I can't say I disagree other than to say that, like, I hate that this happened. Like, I know that's such a childlike response, but just
me too.
I agree.
No, I'm in there. Yeah.
I want to think better of people. Like, I want the people who are, we as leftists believe in essentially, the rights of people, human rights, the ability, like our entire platform, essentially, our entire like arguments are built on, in my opinion, compassion, or at least some variation of care for people as a whole. It really sucks when people get so fucking lost.
Brianna said it best. She made a long Mastodon and Twitter thread talking about how she's part of the policy left, and she's not one of those crazies in the quote unquote infinite left, where it's like, we don't have any particular ends, we're just constantly going for the maximal position. The nature of being motivated by compassion and love, et cetera, is precisely that there isn't a limit point where, no further, you're out now. That's precisely the point. Liberals at one point in time were revolutionary. Just the bare fact of wanting the working classes to have an equal vote with the higher classes, and to be citizens. That was a left-wing position once. That was a revolutionary position once. That was a game changer. It's not anymore, for precisely the reason that when you're a quote-unquote policy leftist, in the sense that you actually place a discrete, and here's the crucial part, not a policy, but a plan to get a policy enacted over the people that you supposedly are doing it for, you've already anchored yourself to a conservatism about that process, which means that if the situation changes, you're now wedded to defending that. If there are people in your community who are being hurt by your rigid defense of this particular course of action, you now have to conserve that position. You are now not really revolutionary anymore. You are a conservative of a hypothetical. I think fundamentally what really does distinguish the actual revolutionary movement, the actual left, from the right and from everybody else, is precisely that. Its endpoint is not an enclosed space. Its endpoint is the constant improvement of things for the people around us. And its categorical imperative is shunning anything that abases the people that you're advocating for. And I think that's the fundamental problem with Wu's position, is that she has made an idol out of a vision of a tolerant enough society for which she has decided in her arrogance that she can carve off certain people at will for the greater good of the whole, because she knows how it will play out and that this is feasible as well. So I think that's fundamentally it. It's like sort of prove just how much somebody is actually on your side by how cheaply they can be bought off to stop moving. And I think we're sort of witnessing a few people stopping, or at least a few people slowing down and considering. And that's disturbing. But that shouldn't stop us. People have been in our position in much worse positions, under much more dire circumstances, not too far away in our history. I don't think we're in that dire of a situation yet in that sense. So I don't see any reason to be pessimistic about the future in that way.
Yeah, I can see that. I will say that people in our chat are mentioning it feels very RGR2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
It is a little similar, isn't it?
Yeah, but at least with the RGR drama, guys, we could at least make fun of the sandals reference.
That's true.
I don't think RGR said anything as bad as the comment about Benny either.
No, I don't think she ever did. I think the closest I've ever heard anyone say anything like that was Contra, and it was Contra making a joke about her between her friends. Yeah, like there's a joke between her and her friends. Never once did I ever hear anyone use that like the series like.
Yeah, the issue with RGR was that she was publicly pedo-jacketing people, which is arguably at a local level significantly worse. Anyways, I don't want to take up any more of your time.
But we really appreciate you coming on, though.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. I like your painting on the wall, by the way. Thank you very much. You two have a good night. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you later.
Too.
Bye.
Bye.
I guess like to finish things up on that, I know we didn't talk a lot towards the end with President Sunday Talk because he was the guest, and also just I'm fucking fried.
And he's pieced out a lot of this stuff.
I guess my point here is that I know it feels like I'm being waffly and I'm not trying to be. I had an amazing conversation with Brianna Wu about bottom surgery, my bottom surgery, and it was really helpful. It was really good. She donated money to me, and I really do appreciate that. And for that, I am eternally grateful. On the other hand, I can't support these things. As a person who is a gender liberationist, I am not by any means okay with this rhetoric.
Well, on the personal level, it sucks, right?
Well, on the personal level, it fucking sucks because, I always hope that I could make more trans girl friends. I always hope that I can make connections. And, I don't do this to make clout. I hope she would listen to my arguments too. I hope she would listen to me and ZZ. We still hold to our views. Non-binary people and xenogender people are valid. That when someone tells you what their identity and their pronouns are, you accept them in good faith, unless given evidence otherwise. And that dysphoria, as written in the DSM, clearly states there are other genders than just male and female, or men and women, excuse me. The reality is that we are, by definition, we look at gender as play, as a self-emergent schema. It is a thing that arises. And I think the issue is that gender is always manifesting. It is always modifying. It is always crystallizing as far as it's the way it is. I and ZZ are of the opinion that play should be something you enjoy. It's something you should go through. And seeing people act this way because they're so afraid of their validity being taken, or they think somehow this will make them less valid, really fucking sucks. I understand there's a little part of every trans person, and you can all argue with me about this. I don't give a fuck. There's a little tiny voice in every trans person that does think just for a second, like, how do we make ourselves more valid? But you know what? Most of us, and I think this is true, most of us, we smother that voice with a pillow because we understand that, like, it's not our place to judge other people's gender and their experiences, but some people give into that shit. In the same way that fascism is a way of giving into your baser instincts, your fears, your desires, these are weaknesses of the human form, in my opinion. They are psychological problems, not in the sense of diagnosis, but in the sense of weaknesses of, maybe, I guess if you want to call it in a non-religious sense, weaknesses of the will, of the spirit, or whatever you want to call it. People give into these things and they become hateful, they become wretched, they become awful. And again, one of our major principles that we hold to is the idea of inclusion. When we had xenogender people coming to the channel, what did we do? We started including them. When we had plural people come to the channel, we started including them. The only people we don't include are people who are non-inclusive of others. That's it. Nazis and the like. We don't allow conservatives. That's it. Or MLs, but I repeat myself. Point is that if you're leaving this conversation or leaving this discussion today with this idea that I'm in any way defending Brianna Wu's statements in those DMs. That is not the case. I am not defending her on those. I'm not defending Keffels. I still love Keffels. I still think Keffels is a great content creator. I still think Keffels is a really great person. I legitimately think this is just a protection of friend thing. I understand that there is clout and there's connections and things to be gained there. Maybe this is me being naive, but I tend to think about how people... people tend to think about it the way they are. One thing that like Gay Fashion Chat said once is, I asked one of those fun tweets, use one word to describe me. And the one that Fesh used that I still really appreciate was loyal. And so I get that gut reaction to wanting to protect somebody who fucking stepped on it. I get that. So, yeah, I hate seeing this shit. And I hate the fact that I lost a follow from Luxander over it. You guys didn't see it, but there was the response to that. And this is something I'm kind of fucking angry about because I'm kind of done with Luxander. And I hate saying that, but that's kind of where the fuck we're at. Move this down here. We're gonna cover fucking drama. Might as well cover fucking drama. So I posted that thing earlier that said, basically, don't ask me how I feel about it. Again, she has an invite. Luxander said, you pass, which seems to mean she respects you by default. I don't pass by any stretch of the imagination, and I appreciate the sarcasm on a serious tweet. I wasn't being sarcastic, but okay. You said I pass and don't live my life. It was by default sarcasm, and I assume she was positive to me because @Keffels retweeted my GoFundMe and I was getting bottom surgery. Please do not make assumptions. I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing. Okay, well, has Brianna met you in person, or is this just going off pictures online? Compared to other trans women that Brianna has recently bashed the appearance of, you pass, but I'll keep my commentary myself from now on. I don't, and no, I have never met her in person. I am not excusing her actions, They were transphobic and catty, but presupposing that I pass as a reason she interacted with me well, with me is bad faith as fuck. You can comment, but be constructive. So
this is just one of those dissonance things that like people have to get over too. Of like,
this has been coming for. Go ahead.
Okay,
I'm sorry, my brain's fucking squirrels. Go.
Okay. On the personal level, like, really, like, people do have multiple sides. People do have positive interactions and negative interactions with everyone. Like, that happens. Like, there are people that I have negative interactions with. Something does. Same deal with Poppy, and like, that's not necessarily a great reason to, flash out or judge or anything else. It sucks when this shit happens, don't get me wrong, but like, yeah, no, I feel like there was such many other things could have been expressed better in this post instead of basing it off of not passing. Like, that sucks a lot. Especially because I know that there are still, like, we were out a couple weeks ago at Target and like some kid just decided to misgender Poppy, and I went and got the manager about it because this kid just randomly like went off and started saying shit. It was funny because we had showed up on President Sunday's panel that day even, and I don't feel as hopeful as so much chat does about Brianna Wu when somebody's really going back into like the transsexual thing. Like, no, those are some older people that are really, really stuck. Like, really, really detrimentally stuck. yeah, do I believe that there are possibly ways to pull them out of it? Sure. Is it incredibly difficult? Yes. And can anyone do it? Probably not. Like we don't, I don't know that we, like, despite like Poppy's single DMs with Brianna, like I don't know that we do have it in to convince her of things. Like I don't know what would give her the needed like rapport or something like that to actually like engage with us on that level. I know I have a really hard time with this too, because I haven't really said it, but like a lot of the reasons that like I hated being a woman and hated that part of myself growing up was because of how much got blamed on it, right? That cattiness that was just supposed to be inborn and ingrained. And that was never my experience of women. That wasn't my experience of myself. And that certainly wasn't like my experience with my friends, right? And so I feel like I'm back in high school right now going, what the shit? Like, why are we doing this? I do still want people to, you know, do the political activism that they would otherwise do. And like, we don't condemn, we don't support like gatekeeping or giving or harassing people that are in Kathleen's community or in her server, because like, seriously, like it is okay to be in people's server, even if the person's problematic. You can make connections, you can make friends, even if that has nothing to do with the content creator, okay? You know, but I would hope that like things improve over time. But
So,
you know, I'll hold on to that. You know, I'm kind of in President Sunday's vote of things will keep moving. Go ahead, love.
okay. I apologize for interrupting you. I got upset about something.
I know you did. Okay.
So,
This one hurts. I know it does.
So I'm just going to be really clear that, like, for a while, it's felt like there's been tension with Luxander over a lot of things. We had very different takes about Hogwarts Legacy. We have had different takes about various different things. I have always been a big fan of Luxander. I really like its work. I still think it is a good person, but I feel like swinging into my replies in this way was really, I'm just gonna call it what it is. It was shitty. I made it very clear that I was conflicted, and this statement about like you pass, which seems to mean she respects you by default. This has no place here. This has no place here. This is disgusting behavior.
Also, like, can I just be honest? Like, I really wish that like
Lauren
Xander
and
would
Radis,
just
thank you so much for the $5 each. Go ahead.
would have just showed up like expressing its feelings. Like, it's really rough to see this because I'm trying to like read this and think of the things that I've seen Brianna Wu do. Like, that's way more clean communication. It actually gets us somewhere, right? Like, just own your feelings.
Yeah, I just expect so much better from Luxander, and it really sucks that it chose to be this way because I've done nothing but defend it. And even when we were debating about Hogwarts Legacy, it had to come out with some fairly like spicy, like fairly, it's fairly like what I would argue is like not comfy stuff. And I guess like the thing for me is that, for me, I like being in this space as an online content creator because I like the people that I meet. Like, I got to become friends with Kevils. I don't get to talk to her that often, but like randomly, I got a text message just saying, I'm going to sue you for being a homosexual. Like, just as a joke. Like, it was really fucking cute. It kind of made my day because it was just, it was at a good time. I like interacting with these folks. I like learning about them. But like this is not okay. I didn't do anything. I didn't do like this. Is this two tweets really that fucking offensive? I was clearly conflicted, clearly upset.
Well,
I even tagged Keffels, and Keffels didn't even like come at me swinging. And again, Marceline, Commicrat, this is a 19-year-old puppy girl, said, I'm sorry, but the shit she said was awful and gross. I don't think there is any reason at all to defend her or give her charity about this. She hangs around with trans med people. My response, I agree. It was fucking awful and gross, and I am still willing to educate her. I know better about this than her and most trans people. Transmedicalism, like MLs, is a cult seeking validation. They can be changed. I am not justifying or excusing her. I'm just stating my feelings. Yeah, she may not be reachable, but it's worth a fucking shot, Fesh. Marceline said, that's fair. A huge red flag for me is when I see people hanging around with transmed types and I lose all faith in them. I hope you're right about this, but I don't think it can be helped. It's fair. It's a reasonable thing, same as Fesh. Again, I agree. Transmeds are gross, but until I talk to her, I can't know why she chose to associate with those degenerates. But I want to ask her directly and not assume. I am not always good at it, but I try to live by my principles. Well, good luck, I guess. Again, this interaction started off angry. Way better. I just wanted to show people that, like, when the stuff like this happens, it doesn't just suck in the space, it also causes these problems. And I guess that's the thing I just want to say is, like, I'm really disappointed in Luxander. Like, that sucks. It should do better. Yeah. Really disappointed in Brianna Wu, and really just, I didn't agree with a lot, everything she said, obviously, but to see her be part of one of these groups, that really sucks. May I make a suggestion without upsetting you? You're welcome to try. Valhalla Vidya, in all due respect, no. Therapy is about learning how to be able to create connection, about creating trust, and learning how to be able to be more vulnerable to the world. It's about being able to make connections. Yeah, and that means that you learn what people to trust and how to find new relationships. It's a learning experience. This is what good therapy will help you with. I'm okay getting hurt. That's the difference.
I don't know. Yeah. If you're telling that trusting people has always screwed me over is a very, like, stuck in your trauma view.
So,
like, just the trick is learning how to trust and actually, like, work with people. And trust doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing the work that we do, that we're going to stop following our goals. Like, we're still going to keep moving. We're still going to keep operating in this space. We're still going to keep reaching out to people and making connections. We just got to get over the personal hurdles too.
Yeah. We
got to take care of ourselves as people sometimes.
So with that said, I think we should probably kill it here because it's been going a long fucking time. This is a way longer fucking stream than we'd planned.
No, that's true.
Guys, please consider becoming members of the Patreon and all the other good stuff. And we're going to end this segment here. We will see you in the next one.